South America extends about 4,600 miles from the Caribbean Sea in the north to Cape Horn in the south. We sailed round the southern end of the continent, starting in Buenos Aires, capital of Argentina, in the east, and ending in Santiago, capital of Chile, in the west. Our first couple of nights were spent at the Sheraton in Buenos Aires, which is conveniently situated at the edge of the city, close to the main railway station. Just across the street is the clock tower presented by Britain to mark Argentina's centenary in 1910. Nearby is the park of San Martin, where trees were in full flower. It was February at the end of summer, and temperatures were in the high 80s. In the park is an area where professional dog walkers take their charges. This keeps them separate from the children's play area. Also in the park there's a statue of San Martin, an Argentinian hero. Among the trees is an ancient rubber tree, and people come here for all forms of exercise. Most of this could be seen without ever leaving our hotel room. The next day we went on a city tour, starting at the Plaza de Mayo, the main square of downtown Buenos Aires. Several of the city's major landmarks are located around the plaza. At one end of the square are the federal government offices, the headquarters of the National Bank, and the financial district. At the other end are the town hall and the Metropolitan Cathedral of Buenos Aires. The cathedral facade looks more Greek than South American. Then we went to La Bocca, which was settled in the 19th century by Italian immigrants. Nowadays it's a flourishing artists' colony. It was here that the tango was invented. Today the music leaks into the streets from the cafes and buskers dance for tips. The colourful buildings derive from the region's poor past, when people used leftover paint from the local shipbuilders. When one colour ran out, they simply opened the next available can.
Hola, regalos si venís, chicas. Bueno, presencia. Para ver, linda. Ahí, miren.
The old harbour area has been redeveloped for chic housing, bars and restaurants. Next stop was at the Recoleta Cemetery. Here the famous and wealthy of Buenos Aires are buried in large underground crypts beneath ostentatious mausoleums. The most visited mausoleum is that of the Duarte family, famous for their daughter Eva, better known under her married name of Eva Perón. Just outside the cemetery is a huge ancient rubber tree, under whose shade we waited for the bus to transfer us to our home for the next 2 weeks, the cruise ship Norwegian Crown. Overnight we sailed down the River Plate to Montevideo, capital of Uruguay. First thing the following morning we went on a city tour, starting at the old gate in Independence Square. The square is the junction between the historic quarter and the rest of the city. Palacio Salvo at the end of the square was once South America's highest building and still dominates Montevideo's skyline. Then we were taken to the Parliament building. It's an impressive piece of architecture incorporating many different colours of marble, beautiful paintings and chandeliers. After all this time in the city, it was nice to get out into the countryside at the Estancia La Rapida, where we were greeted by the family. We went on a hayride across the ranch and down to the banks of the River Plate, where we had drinks and snacks. The river is over 100 miles wide at this point. Then we went back to the farmhouse where lunch was cooking. We started with sausage and delicious sweetbreads. Then we sat down to the main meal, whilst being entertained with music and dancing. After lunch we were given a demonstration of sheep shearing and invited to have a go ourselves.
It's more difficult because the wool is wet. It's sort of like...
It must have been quite a relief to get rid of that, as it should have been done 3 months ago. I volunteered to milk the cow, and would you believe it, they thought I'd been brought up on a farm.
Very good. He knows what he's doing, huh?
Then it was time for fun and games. But I didn't volunteer for this one.
Version of a sleigh ride.
That's warm on the butt.
The next day was spent at sea, sailing down the Argentinian coast, so it was a good chance to find our way around the ship. This is the yacht club, where we had breakfast and buffet lunches. The casino has 4 gaming tables and a wide selection of one-armed bandits. The 2-storey atrium has shops on the upper level and reception with a permanent art display on the lower one. The Starlight Lounge is used for shows, lectures, and, in this case, tango lessons.
Repeat that from the beginning again.
Art Deco glass decorates the stairwells. The Seven Seas is the formal dining room. The following day we arrived in Puerto Madryn, where the tour coaches were already lined up on the quayside. Our trip today first took us the 9 miles south to Punta Loma Natural Reserve, the playground of a permanent colony of sea lions. Then we drove to the town of Trelaw to visit the Paleontology Museum, the most important of its kind in South America. It displays some of the vast number of fossilized remains that have been found in this part of Patagonia, ranging from the earliest human inhabitants to the dinosaurs which once populated the region. Fossils are still being discovered, and we were able to see them being prepared for display. Then on to the village of Gaiman. This part of Patagonia was settled in the late 1800s by Welsh immigrants, who have left their mark on the area to this day. Some of the language and traditions still remain, and we were treated to some of them, along with an excellent cup of tea and cream cakes at the Tigwin Tea Room. After tea we returned to Puerto Madryn, where we took a stroll along the promenade before returning to the ship. We spent another day at sea heading south to the Falkland Islands. We arrived off Port Stanley on a very blustery morning and were escorted in by the pilot boat. The low, windswept hills around Stanley are very reminiscent of the Hebridean Islands. The ship was too large to go into the inner harbour, so we transferred by tender. From the pier we were transferred to a Land Rover and taken over the peat bogs to the penguin rookery at Lagoon Bluff. It was bitterly cold with piercing wind, and even the Gentoo penguins appeared to be shivering. It was the first day of autumn and their molt was almost complete. One juvenile with obsessive-compulsive disorder was desperately trying to build a nest, an activity which should have been carried out in early spring. Sea cabbage grows all over the beach, and the nearby cafe of the same name provided a warming cuppa and a welcome break from the wind. Meanwhile, back at the nest, another juvenile was pinching the building materials. The wind was proving too strong even for him. Perhaps a brisk walk along the beach will warm things up a bit. Among the hundreds of Gentoo penguins was one group of 4 king penguins. The Land Rovers then took us back to Stanley. With its population of 1,500, Stanley, capital of the Falklands, has the feel of a small Scottish fishing village. It's the world's most southerly administrative centre. Just off the main street is the mizzenmast of the SS Great Britain. The Falklands are a British dependency, but apart from defence are completely financially independent. All health services, including dentistry, are totally free, including air transport to hospitals in Chile or the UK for conditions not treatable on the island. Christchurch Cathedral stands on the main street, and next to it is an arch made from the jawbones of two blue whales. We continue to sail southwest, rounding Cape Horn the following evening. Cape Horn is actually a small island marking the southernmost tip of South America, and it's noted for its bad weather and difficult sailing conditions. Although this doesn't apply to modern cruise ships, it's still a brave person who takes a small yacht round. The rounding of the Horn is marked by a special ceremony involving ladles of icy water, after which one is entitled to wear a ring in the left ear. We doubled back round the Horn for a second time and headed north through Drake's Passage to Ushuia, the southernmost city on the planet, and capital of the Argentinian province of Tiere del Fuego, an island divided between Argentina and Chile. Ushuia calls itself the end of the world. As a result of its location close to the South Pole, in the summer it has approximately 18 hours of daylight, and in the winter 7 or 8. We were driven about 10 miles west into the Tiere del Fuego National Park. This is an area of lakes, rivers, glaciers and forests. At the post office at the end of the world, you can get a special stamp in your passport. This sign marks the end of the world's most southerly road. Much of the 150,000-acre park is peat bog, and special walkways have been laid to give access to views and let people get closer to the wildlife. The average temperature of Tiere del Fuego is 6 degrees centigrade, or 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has 25 inches of rain a year. On windward-facing slopes, it rains almost continuously. In the afternoon we sailed westwards through the Beagle Channel, passing numerous glaciers and waterfalls. We arrived in Punta Arenas, our first port in Chile, at 7 o'clock the following morning, and were transferred straight to the airport. This is the departure point for the 4-engined aircraft which fly to Antarctica. We, however, boarded a smaller Twin Otter for a flight in the other direction. We flew over the forests, lakes and fjords of Chilean Patagonia. 40 minutes later we arrived in Puerto Natales, where we picked up a coach to drive to Torres del Paine National Park. As we drove across the rolling Patagonian steppes, we passed lakes and mountains and saw wild guanaco, a relative of the llama, at the side of the road. We stopped for a few minutes at Laguna Amarga before entering the park itself, one of the world's top 10 national parks, named a Biosphere Reserve by UNESCO in 1978. The Torres from which the park takes its name towers 6,600 feet above Nordenskjold Lake. We left the bus to take a short walk through the park. Nordenskjold Lake empties into Pejoy Lake through the Salto Grande waterfall. The next 2 days were spent at sea, but totally different from any sea days we had had so far, as we were cruising through the Strait of Magellan, twisting and winding our way between the thousands of small islands just off the west coast of Chile. The weather was glorious, and most people took the opportunity to spend as much time as possible on deck watching the magnificent scenery glide past, as the rocky mountains of the low Andes gave way to high snow-capped peaks. By mid-afternoon, we began to see small pieces of ice floating in the water. As we got further into the fjord, the ice floes became larger and more numerous. The ship's tender was launched to collect ice to use in the fire and ice treatment at the beauty salon. The fjord was a cul-de-sac, at the end of which was this massive glacier. Oh, so carefully the ship turned round and headed back into the channel. The following day the weather had changed dramatically, and after a quick look outside at the mist and rain, we decided to spend the day inside, following the ship's entertainment programme, starting with a lecture on women pirates.
So we have records of all sorts of women in various wars signing up and masquerading as men.
There was a new collection of artwork on display in the atrium, and the previous day's photographs were in the racks ready for inspection or purchase if you were feeling rich enough, as they were up to £7.50 each. Then it was time for fruit and vegetable carving in the main restaurant.
Carefully.
Just push it back.
Wow.
Sometimes it...
Late that night, we docked in Puerto Chacabuco. Developed in the 1930s, it's the port of entry to the Aysén region of Chile, but is basically a small fishing village. 15 minutes away is the visitor centre of the Icon del Sur Park. From here we were taken for a guided walk through the park, where we were shown many of the plants native to this area. The climate in this part of Patagonia is temperate, but very wet, and much of the national park is marshland. I don't know what this bird was doing, but it seemed to have its beady eye on us. The walk ended at the 72-foot high waterfall known as the Old Man's Beard. We then went to the edge of Risco Lake to the King Show. Here, in front of a blazing fire, we were treated to music, dancing, cocktails, and all sorts of tasty snacks. We returned to the Norwegian Crown for lunch as she sailed north towards Puerto Mont. In the afternoon, we went to a form of Call My Bluff, presented by the ship's entertainers.
We're going to show you 4 very strange and obscure words that you probably have never seen before. What you have to do, they're each going to give you a definition. You have to choose which one is telling the truth.
Because sometimes in life you have to...
Finally, our captain speaking.
Captain, well, who is captain speaking?
That's his name. Every time he comes on the intercom, he goes, "This is your captain speaking." So now, finally, our captain speaking. He goes, "Ole, ole, ole, beady, 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 speedy, beady. Give me a full fart." And a full fart is Norwegian or Scandinavian for full speed ahead. And that explains all the bubbles you see on the back of the ship.
And that was the right answer. When we arrived in Puerto Montt, we drove out to Lake Esmeralda and, just for a change, went on a cruise. This time on a catamaran, which took us for a tour around the lake. Unfortunately, because of the weather, it was only right at the very end that we were able to see the brilliant emerald colour which gives the lake its name. Then we went to Petrojuey Falls, where the waters plunge over hard volcanic rocks to form wild, rushing cascades. We had one final day at sea as we headed north to Valparaiso. The last demonstration in the restaurant was baking and pastry model making.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I want a taste of your dough.
We mix the dough and sugar.
No, I want to taste. Oh, this one. The bread.
The hot sunny weather brought everybody out to enjoy the pool, the jacuzzi, or just to sunbathe. There didn't seem to be many takers for the walking path. We disembarked in a cold, misty Valparaiso and went to the popular resort of Viña del Mar with its floral clock and seaside park. We then climbed out of the mist and into the hot sunshine of the Central Valley, where we stopped at El Molino, a horse ranch, for a snack of empanadas, meat-filled pasties, and the wine for which the area is world famous. The ranch was diversifying into ostriches. Then we went to Santiago, capital of Chile, and had a city tour taking in the telecommunications tower and the presidential offices, before going to check in at the Sheraton Santiago. The climate here is so reliably warm and dry that the main restaurant is out of doors. Then we went to San Cristobal Hill, where there is a park and the local swimming pool. But above all, from the top of the hill are the most magnificent views over the city of Santiago and the snow-capped Andes beyond.